In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the rain rule from the 1992 World Cup. Now, when you remember the rain rule, you probably remember images of South Africa needing 22 off 13 balls in the semifinal, and then it's starting to rain, so they go off for a little bit, and then they need 13 off 7 balls, and then it's raining a little bit more, so they have to go off again, and then eventually they need 22 off just 1 ball. And obviously, as anybody can tell, that is a very ridiculous rule, and it makes no sense to go from needing 22 off 13 balls, so basically 2 overs, to needing 22 off just 1 ball. Obviously, it doesn't make sense. But a little known thing about the rain rule of the 1992 World Cup is that it affected many more games than just the semifinal. Obviously, the semifinal is remembered because, frankly, it happened at like dying moments of the game, so it was very ridiculous. But it was also just a semifinal, so obviously it's gonna be ingrained in people's memories more. But in this video, I'm gonna be giving a sort of overview of the rule, and then going through previous examples where during the group stages that games were frankly decimated because of the rain rule. Now, a brief explanation of the rain rule was that prior to the 1992 World Cup and this rain rule, whenever it started raining and during the second innings and they needed to revise a target, they would just do it based off run rate that the team batting first scored. So let's say if Team A scores 250 in the first innings, which was a full 50 overs, and then second innings is reduced to only 20 overs. 250 and 50 overs was a run rate of 5, so we're just going to adjust that to needing a target of 100 in 20 overs, which is again our run rate of 5. Now, obviously, this is not very fair because obviously sustaining a run rate of 5 for getting 100 runs, just 20 overs, is a lot easier than sustaining it for 50 overs and getting 250 runs. Now, obviously, that was quite unfair to the team batting first, and the 1992 World Cup's rain rule sought to fix that, but they just ended up going to the other extreme. Now, what would happen in the rain rule in the 1992 World Cup was that the least productive overs from the team batting first would be subtracted. So that might sound a bit confusing, but as an example, let's say Team A bats first and they score 250 runs, just like the prior example. Now, in the second innings, the second innings is reduced by 5 overs, so it's a 45 over game. Now, let's say the 5 least scoring overs of Team A's innings were just 5 runs. So let's say there were 5 1-run overs. So now the new target will be 245 off 45 overs. So because the least productive 5 overs of Team A were just 5 runs, then Team B's target, although the innings is reduced by 5 overs, the runs are also only reduced by 5 runs. So that's also, if you think of it logically, at first it might sound sort of okay, but the more you sort of get into it, and especially when you start seeing examples like I'm going to show to you, it really also proves as a ridiculous method, and the ridiculousness of this World Cup is what prompted the Duckworth-Lewis method to sort of be made. So enough with the explanations, let's get into actual examples. Now, the first time this had to be used was in the 12th group game between Australia and India. In the first innings, Australia scored 237 for 9. And then 16 overs into India's innings, when they were at 45 for 1, it started raining. 3 overs were lost, but the target was only reduced by 2 runs, as those were the 3 least productive Australian overs. India ended up scoring 234 runs, losing by only 1 run.
Situation, you need a boundary.
Spread out 4 inside the circle. Here's Tom Moody. He's got it at 6, could it be? He's coming around Mark Taylor, it's Steve Waugh. He's dropped it. He's got to go back for the 3rd. Come on, run. They're running. It's they win by 1 run, Australia. What a finish. He dropped the catch, but the throw was good enough and the runner was not fast enough.
As you can see in that clip, it was quite the chaotic ending. But the thing is that Duckworth-Lewis Stern today would actually set India a total of 228 in 47 overs, which India actually ended up achieving. So by today's standards, India should have won that match. That was the first example of the rain rule being used in the 1992 World Cup, but it was still a relatively tame example since only a few overs were reduced. Now, in this example, you'll see how it really completely just destroyed a game. This match was the 19th match, also including India, this time against Zimbabwe. The match was reduced to 32 overs from the start. India scored 203 for 7 in their 32 overs. In reply, Zimbabwe were 104 for 1 in 19 overs when it started raining. The match would not resume and would be decided on the rain rule. On paper, Zimbabwe ended up losing by 55 runs, as the revised target in 19 overs was calculated to be 159.
I tell you what, it's absolutely pouring here, and I think they're going to leave the field.
They are, but after 19 overs, they needed to be 158. If they don't come out again, they needed to have got through to 158, which were after 19 overs, they were the best 19, should I say, that India put together, and so they're certainly well short of that.
So this, in effect, became a 19-over match, and the highest scoring overs for India added up to 158, and with just one ball bowled in the 20th over, then the 19 highest scoring overs for Zimbabwe came to 104. So that was the way things finished here at Trustbank Park.
DLS today would have set a par score for Zimbabwe of 91 at the 19-over mark, which Zimbabwe surpassed, meaning that by today's standards, again, Zimbabwe would have won the match. This match clearly showed that the rain rule wasn't really that well thought out, and especially when it played out in a match, it definitely wasn't, because Zimbabwe went from being in a quite commanding position, or at the very least you could say it was a pretty tight match. They went from being in that position to losing by 55 runs on paper, which is quite a big loss. Another match that was shifted because of the rain rule was the 22nd match played between South Africa and Pakistan. South Africa batted first and they made 211 for 7 in their 50 overs. And in reply, Pakistan were 74 for 2 at 21.3 overs when it started raining. At that point, Pakistan required a further 138 runs off 171 balls, so they were in a quite comfortable position.
And he got 4 for that. As the rain starts to, well, I won't say belt down, but it's only seconds away from belting down. And I reckon they'll come off. It's coming down very heavily. Imran is saying that he's quite happy to stay out there.
Now they're coming off. The conditions are ridiculous, and only thing is the pitch will get wet. Imran very unhappy there.
The rain caused a delay of about an hour, and 16 overs were lost, yet the target was only reduced by 18 runs. When play did resume, Pakistan now needed 120 runs off 87 balls. Pakistan ended up falling short of the revised target by 20 runs, scoring 173 in their 36 overs. The DLS method today would have given Pakistan a target of 162, which again Pakistan surpassed by 11 runs. So again, another match today would have gone the other way if we had the Duckworth-Lewis method instead of the rain rule. Again, this shows how ridiculous the rain rule was, because going into the rain delay, Pakistan had a required run rate of about, well, I just calculated it, 4.84, and then after the rain delay, they needed 8.28 runs, which is essentially needing to play T20 cricket in 1992. And obviously it makes sense for the run rate to rise a little bit, but when only 16 overs out of 50 are lost, you wouldn't expect your required run rate to double. Again, just showing how, well, stupid the rain rule was. One last example of the rain rule messing up a group game was the England-Pakistan group game, not the final. This one may or may not have affected the outcome of the match. It's hard to tell. Pakistan were all out for 74 in 40 overs. Yeah, very slow. So England's target at the start of the innings was 75 as Pakistan were out for 74. But at around the 6th over mark, it started raining and it was about a 3-hour long delay. So many overs were cut. In the end, 34 overs were cut, so it was now a 16-over match. But England's total target was only reduced by 11 runs. So I remember they went from needing 75 runs in 50 overs to needing 64 runs in 16 overs. Now, obviously, 34 overs reduced, but only 11 runs reduced. Again, glaring example of how stupid this rain rule was. And actually here, you can see a little clip of a broadcaster at the time also saying how stupid the rules are.
And after a lengthy delay, the revised total is 64 runs from 16 overs. A further example of the crass stupidity of the current rain-affected match rules, as England's original target was 75 off 50 overs, and it becomes 64 off 16.
Now, as I understand it, with the Duckworth-Lewis rules today, England's target in 16 overs would be 36. When England came back on the field, now needing 64, their score was 17 for 1 at the 6-over mark. Now, let's say they needed 36 instead of needing 64. They would have only needed 19 and about the 2 overs more of play that they got. They only got 8 overs of play. So it's a bit of a stretch, but theoretically, England had a far greater chance if they knew that the target was only 36 instead of 64, that they could have maybe scored 19 runs in 2 overs before the match was ended. Or if they were so close to a target, maybe the umpires would allow, all right, an extra over or 2 here just so we can get this game in. But as it ended up being, they were only able to get 8 overs of play, and I think England were at 24 runs, so still 40 away from the 64 they needed. So it just ended up being a no result. Now, obviously, there's the example of the semifinal, but that's pretty well known, and I already did kind of go over it in the intro, so I don't feel a need to go into it in too much more detail. But there is an interesting article that I'll link in the description about how were South Africa really the victims of the rain rule, or was it sort of a calculated risk that ended up going wrong because they couldn't control 100% of the factors? But essentially, the gist of it is that they bowled very slow in the first innings so that England would not be able to bat their full 50 overs. So in a way, they were maybe not cheating, but they were exploiting the rules. It's an interesting article. I'll link it in the description. But yeah, that's all for the rain rule. As you can see, hopefully this opened your eyes to how ridiculous this rain rule was, and it paved the way to creating the Duckworth-Lewis method, and then eventually the Duckworth-Lewis-Stern method, which is what we have today. Which, while it might have some issues, it may not be perfect. It's still a whole lot better than whatever we had back here. Anyways, I hope you found the video informative and interesting, and if you did, leave a like on the video. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye.